Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission here is always the same. We take complex concepts, dense research, and, sometimes deeply familiar yet misunderstood ideas, and we give you the intellectual shortcut you need to be truly well-informed.
And today we're definitely getting into one of those.
We are. Today we're opening up a topic that is just central to the lives of billions of people worldwide.
Yeah.
The concept of Salat.
Right. And if you're like most people, especially anyone who's engaged with religious or cultural studies, the term Salat probably conjures a very, very specific image in your mind.
Oh, absolute.
It's almost universally translated as namaz, the formal daily ritual prayer. It's an established fundamental pillar of the faith.
But we have some really fascinating source material today. It's a linguistic and semantic analysis from Professor Dr. Mohammed Nurdosan. And it argues that we've fundamentally mistaken a part for the whole.
Yeah, it's putting it mildly.
His work basically claims that this word, salat, is far more than just ritual. It's a huge umbrella concept, one that encompasses the total duty and responsibility loaded upon human existence.
And that is the key distinction we're exploring. When you read the Quran, the word salat appears over and over, and almost every modern translation renders it as prayer.
Every single one.
But the material we're looking at suggests that while namaz, that daily worship practice, is, undoubtedly included within the meaning, the fundamental overarching meaning is actually duty and responsibility.
Okay, so let's be absolutely clear right out of the gate, especially given how sensitive a topic like this can be.
Good idea.
This deep dive is not about debating theology. It's not a statement about whether specific rituals should or shouldn't be performed. We are focused purely on a textual and semantic study.
Exactly. Our goal is to clarify the linguistic scope of the word as it appears in the source text, based on this academic analysis. We're operating strictly in the realm of what the source calls matin sharhi text commentary.
So not theological interpretation or tafsir.
Not at all. We are treating the professor's analysis as a specialized linguistic guide. We want to understand the full historical and semantic breadth of this word before its meaning, potentially narrowed into its later cultural definition.
And to understand a concept as big as duty, the source says we first have to understand the foundational prerequisites for even accepting responsibility in the first place.
Exactly. Where does it all begin?
Okay, so let's unpack this intellectual prerequisite. Because the source material doesn't just jump into action items. It starts with the human faculty required to accept any duty, reason or aql.
Yeah, and right away there's a critical distinction. The analysis states that aql is not just the capacity to think, it's specifically the thought process that leads you to truth.
So it's not just having a brain, it's about how you use it.
Precisely. Think of it this way. Your brain is the hardware. It can run a lot of different programs, right?
Yep.
Including programs for error or prejudice or just total misdirection. But the source argues that the hardware's potential only becomes aql true reason if the program you're running on it is correctly oriented toward discerning and pursuing what is true.
And the consequence of using aql correctly is direct. The force highlights that the Quran defines people of reason, the aql sahipleri, as the ones who are truly the believers, the mu'minler.
The two identities are completely intertwined. You can't separate them. And that leads directly into the nature of belief itself, iman.
Which we often just translate as faith.
We do, but the root of the word I believed, amentu, is emin olmak. And that means to be secure or to be certain. True belief, then, is built on a foundation of certainty.
And here's the intellectual catch, right? Certainty requires knowledge.
Here it is.
You can't be certain, you can't be secure about something you don't actually know. So the certainty that forms a genuine amen has to be built on correctly acquired knowledge. It's not a blind leap.
It's an informed, secure stance. And this intellectual foundation immediately creates the stark contrast between two approaches to belief, which the source material defines with striking clarity: taqlid versus tahqiq.
And this is, you could argue, the most important foundational concept we're going to discuss today.
I think so.
Let's start with taqlid. It's defined as imitation or blind following, and the etymology they use is just so powerful. Taqlid comes from qalad,
Which means a necklace Or a collar.
A collar. I mean, that imagery is intentional. Taklid symbolizes accepting beliefs that are just inherited from your ancestors, literally wearing that ancestral collar without any questioning, without any investigation.
It's tradition for tradition's sake, belief without scrutiny. And, it's comfortable, but it's not reasoned.
Contrast that with tahqiq.
Yeah.
This is the investigative, the intellectual approach. The source calls it the faith of the researcher, the enlightened one.
Right. This is the real basis of belief, according to this analysis. It's faith that's based on verification, on inquiry, on deep research. So the true believer is the one who actively investigates and verifies the truth of their stance.
It's like the difference between just, reposting a headline you see on social media versus actually clicking the link, reading the article, checking the sources, and then forming an opinion.
That's a perfect modern analogy. Taklid is the blind repost. Tahqiq is doing the work. And if the foundation of faith is tahqiq, then it requires massive, continuous intellectual effort.
And this emphasis on the active, investigative mind leads directly to humanity's core role and responsibility. Why did God give us this intellectual prerequisite in the first place?
Well, the argument is that God breathed his spirit into the children of Adam and bestowed the most critical attribute, the ability to judge and use their intellect, the power of hukum verme.
That combination of sensory perception sight and hearing and intellectual capacity thinking and judging, that is what qualifies humans to be appointed as God's caliphs or life on earth.
Exactly. Caliphs, in this context, are representatives. They're capable of exercising divine dispositions, or tasarruflar. They're meant to be stewards of the world.
But the key concept here that really stood out to me is not just possessing will, but manufacturing it. The source uses this phrase, iridesini amal etmek.
Literally, manufacturing will. And the question is, how do you do that?
Right.
It's the active engagement of those mental and intellectual faculties. Will is the power of choosing and desiring. But for humans, it's not passive. It's actively generated. You take in information, you process it through reason, your akal, and then you form a deliberate will, an irade.
And that capacity to manufacture a deliberate, reasoned free will is what makes humanity responsible in the first place.
You can't hold someone accountable for a duty unless they possess the judgment and the deliberate will to actually execute it.
The source is building this incredibly tight logical chain here. No akal, no reason, means no tahqiq, no verification.
No tahqiq means no genuine iman, no certainty.
And no manufactured will means no capability for duty.
And that leads us straight to the very first command in the Revelation. This whole intellectual foundation is linked to the instruction of kirat, reading or recitation.
But the analysis argues that in this context, kirat implies something far more robust than just, reading words on a page. It signifies researching and scrutinizing.
So the famous command, Iqra bismi rabbik, the first revelation, gets reframed by this source material. It's not a passive request to read in the name of your Lord.
It's an imperative.
It's an imperative. Research and scrutinize his signs and verses in the name of your Lord. The founding principle of the revelation is deep intellectual engagement and scrutiny.
So if that's the starting line, then any subsequent command to perform Salat duty must require an active, reasoned, comprehensive engagement with the world, not just a set of mechanical, passive movements.
The stage is set. It has to be something massive, active, and intellectual. Now we have to see if the language itself actually supports this grand scope.
This is where the detective work really begins. Here's where it gets really, really interesting. We are going back to the foundational dictionaries of classical Arabic to see the raw materials of the word salat. To understand the breadth of this concept, we have to examine its linguistic root, sala, and all of its associated terms.
Right. And when you consult classical Arabic dictionaries like Qamus al-Muhit, you find something, physical and frankly, pretty strange. The primary concrete meaning of salat relates to the body.
Specifically the middle of the back. The surtin vasatiortasa, often close to the waist or pelvis.
It's so specific, and you immediately have to ask, why would a social and spiritual duty be named after the middle of your back?
Well, the source explains that it also relates to the lower hip region, and one scholar cited, Ibn Durayd, connected the sala bone to the last bone in the human body to decompose.
The tailbone area. The kuruksakumu.
Just think about that implication for a second. If the root of the word for duty is tied to the central, most enduring foundational structure of our existence, the one bone that remains when all else turns to dust.
It suggests that salat is not a temporary practice or some optional add-on. It's a core, central, enduring point of your existence and identity. It's central to being human.
That's a powerful metaphor. The central backbone of your existence is your duty. But the most surprising etymological connection comes from a completely different arena.
Ancient horse racing.
I did not see this one coming.
No, it's fantastic. This is the analogy that Rakib al-Isfahani, who was one of the great masters of Islamic semantics, later drew upon. The root sal means the horse's haunch or hip, and from this, we get the term musali.
In modern usage, a muzali is the one who prays. Simple enough.
But in the context of ancient horse races, musali was the technical term for the second-place horse.
The second-place horse,
Yeah.
not the winner.
Not the winner. The winner was the farasul muqaddam. The musali was the horse directly following. The action described is tazliyat. The second horse's nose is running right up close to the haunch, the sala, of the first-place horse.
So it's tracking, following, coming in right behind the leader.
Exactly. Therefore, the musali is linguistically defined as the one who follows or tracks the leader.
This completely transforms the act of salat. It goes from praying to the act of following, tracking, or being a dedicated disciple. The person performing salat is the muzali, who emulates the actions and the movement of the preceding leader, in this case the prophet, or maybe earlier prophets.
And this isn't just some clever linguistic exercise. It was historically applied to the Quran. The source material emphasizes al-Isfahani's interpretation of a verse in Surah al-Mudaththir, where deniers in the afterlife say, "We were not among the muzalin."
Okay, so if you follow the traditional translation, that reads, "We were not among those who prayed."
But al-Isfahani interpreted this as, "We were not among those who followed the prophet."
That is a tectonic shift.
It is. It means a statement about missing a ritual is transformed into a statement about rejecting a prophetic movement, refusing to track the leader, turning away from the collective moral effort. It demands action, not just quiet contemplation.
And this concept of active movement and striving is reinforced by the next linguistic cluster, which connects salat directly to intensive effort and material action.
We move from the horse track to the battlefield. Salat is also applied to a sharp, polished, and quickly moving sword.
A sword, an implement of action, precision, impact.
And by extension, the related term salat describes a person who works diligently and perseveres, moving like that sharp, active sword in matters and affairs.
So this is someone who is resourceful, effective, skillful, a persistent initiator.
Yeah.
A hardworking entrepreneur, someone who cuts through problems.
That's it. This is a definition about dynamic engagement, not passive ritual. And there's more linguistic evidence. The word insalat means moving quickly, running, and surpassing others, leaving them behind.
So it's about intensive effort, competition, a competitive drive toward goodness.
And then the analysis drops the most visceral and maybe the most abstract definition in this whole cluster. Yusalin can mean wrestling with fire.
Wrestling with fire. What does that even mean?
Well, the source clarifies. The fire here is an abstract representation of danger, of sedition, of all forms of societal strife. Fitna fasat.
So if we pull all of this section together, salat is the enduring core of your being, like the tailbone. It's the active discipline of following a truth-based movement, like the second horse. It's the effectiveness of a sharp instrument, the sword. And it is the difficult, intense struggle against chaos and danger, wrestling with fire.
The common thread through all of it is active, comprehensive engagement, centrality, and duty fulfilled through striving. So if this is the deep linguistic foundation, it becomes highly plausible that salat in early tradition was also far broader than just the 5 daily rituals.
Which is where we need to go next, to see how this broad meaning manifested in the earliest recorded tradition.
Exactly. If the word salat is meant to signify this comprehensive duty, we should expect to find it used in early tradition to represent a lot more than simply physical prayer.
And the source material says we do. It acknowledges that some later scholars, like Ibn al-Athir, standardized salat in the hadith literature to mean namaz, but it provides some compelling counter-evidence showing its much broader use.
Yeah, the material shows salat standing in for a whole range of spiritual and social actions. Dua, which is supplication, seeking forgiveness, mercy, blessing, support, and aid.
The anecdotal evidence here is crucial because it gives us a clear contextual snapshot where salat just cannot mean ritual prayer.
Right. The story involves Abdullah bin Abi Efa, who brought charity, or sadaqah, to the Prophet, and the Prophet responded by praying, "O Allah, grant salat to the family of so-and-so."
You cannot logically substitute ritual prayer into that sentence. The Prophet wasn't asking God to make the family perform the ritual.
Of course not. He was invoking divine blessings, support, and aid. And this establishes that salat is a two-way concept. It's a duty performed by humans, but it's also aid or support granted to humans by God or by others.
That shifts the entire dynamic from a purely personal religious transaction to this continuous social and spiritual interdependence.
Hmm. And this interpretation supports the idea that a statement like, every Muslim has a responsibility to perform salat every day, refers to a constant moral burden, a daily commitment to duty, not solely a 5 times a day ritual.
But the most illustrative traditional reference provided by the source is that specific hadith that defines salat as comprehensive social action.
Oh, this one is fantastic. The story goes that a man found the command of salat to be heavy, which suggests it was more than just a quick ritual. And the prophet responded by breaking down what salat actually entailed in the social realm.
And the list is just breathtaking in its breadth.
It really is. He explained that enjoining the good is salat, forbidding the evil is salat, lifting the burden of a weak person is salat.
Even removing harmful things from the road is salat, and every step taken is salat.
This list essentially defines salat as active participation in societal upliftment. It transforms the duty from something you do in private into a continuous state of public awareness and moral intervention. Removing a rock from the road, that's the lowest bar of performing your salat, your duty.
The conclusion drawn from these examples, according to the source, is that salat is used for every kind of good deed, her tulu hayula amel.
Right. The context strongly favors the meaning of comprehensive duty over a narrowly defined ritual. The effort is the duty.
The source even mentions some early scholars like Aha and Hassan al-Basri, who viewed salat as being synonymous with din, with religion itself.
And if salat is functionally equivalent to the entire concept of the divine system, then reducing it to one specific ritual action seems, well, impossible.
And this leads to an important linguistic principle, which the source compares to poetic license.
Yeah, just like a great poet, say, Shaygalib, might assign specific meanings to common words within the framework of their larger work. The Quran also sometimes assigns special meanings to existing Arabic words that go beyond their typical dictionary definitions.
The lesson here is that you can't fully understand a Quranic term just by looking it up in a dictionary that predates the revelation. The meaning has to be deciphered through the Quran's overall semantic world, its continuous message.
Which in this case appears to be an active intellectual call to comprehensive duty. So we've established the intellectual foundation, the tahqiq. We've established the linguistic versatility, the tailbone, horse, sword, fire, and the traditional breath, every good deed.
Now we have to address the heart of the critique. Why did the meaning narrow, and what does the Quran's unified message tell us when we reject those external influences?
This is where things get a bit more critical.
Okay, this section requires us to walk carefully as the analysis takes a critical turn. It questions the dominance of secondary sources that may have been used historically to define salat after the initial revelation.
Right. The source argues that later additions like sunnat, custom, ijma, consensus, and qiyas, analogy, were attempts to undermine the singularity of the Quran and render it, in their words, makruh, marginalized, or abandoned.
And we have to report the source's argument impartially here. They assert that the original meaning of sunnat, or a custom, originally referred to general Arab customs, or even the religion of the pre-Islamic era, Jahiliyyah.
And crucially, it was also used to refer to the customs of the Umayyads.
The political context is inescapable in the source's view. They argue that the concept of al-Sunnah wa al-Jama'ah, the people of the Sunnah and the community, became directly linked to the Umayyad regime's ideological character.
The source even notes that Jama'ah refers specifically to the years of Muawiyah's rule, called Yevmul Jama'ah, the Day of the Community. This suggests the term became an ideological label tied to a specific political power structure rather than a purely textual one.
So the implication is that some key definitions, including the rigid ritualistic definition of salat, may have entered the broader cultural bloodstream through these historically influenced interpretations, which the source sees as being disconnected from the Quranic text itself.
Exactly. And furthermore, the source critiques reliance on qiyas, or analogy. They relate this practice to the mutashabi, the ambiguous verses found in Surah Al-Imran.
We should probably explain mutashabi clearly. These are verses whose meaning is intentionally obscure or figurative, allowing for multiple interpretations.
The source cites the verse that warns that those with crookedness in their hearts only follow the interpretation of these ambiguous verses as their religion. The implication is that using speculative analogy, qiyas, where clear textual commands exist, is following ambiguity rather than certainty.
So it's the opposite of tahqiq.
It's the polar opposite, and this argument reinforces the fundamental command to dedicate religion exclusively to God. If the Quran is the sole, clear basis, relying on speculative analogy or controversial political consensus violates that core command for intellectual certainty.
Okay, so once the semantic field is cleared of these external influences, the true meaning of Salat as comprehensive support begins to shine through, especially when you analyze specific Quranic contexts.
And this is perhaps most visible in Quran 33.56, In Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi.
Traditionally, this is translated as, Allah and His angels send blessings or salutations, salawat, upon the Prophet. But if we use the root meaning of support and aid, the translation becomes a bit illogical. It implies God is performing a recitation ritual.
Right. But the semantic correction, using that root meaning of support, completely changes the scope. The source advocates for this reading. Allah and His forces, His powers under His command, the Meliklari, support the Prophet, strengthen him, and help him.
That's active divine intervention and assistance.
It is. And this clarification then informs the subsequent command to believers. O believers, you too support him and yield to him with complete submission.
So that command is now understood to mean, be his helper, stand behind his struggle, and submit completely to the Quran he brought. The human act of Salat is aligning yourself with the prophetic mission.
Providing material and moral support and yielding to the revealed text. And this concept of support and duty is further amplified when we see how Salat is almost never mentioned in isolation in the Quran.
That's a great point. It's always in a cluster of actions, especially paired with financial obligations like zakat or infaq.
The obligation to fulfill these purifying financial duties is constantly coupled with iqamat al-salat, establishing the duty. They are inseparable. This juxtaposition signifies that you can't establish your duty to God without simultaneously establishing your duty to the community through wealth redistribution and social justice.
We see this pattern repeated all over the text. In Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, seeking help from God must be done through patience and establishing Salat. And the surrounding verses add other duties: obeying God, doing good to parents, kin, orphans, the poor, speaking kindly, honoring covenants.
These are all facets of a comprehensive social and individual duty. You can't achieve one without the others. They are all expressions of the larger Salat concept.
And the ultimate synthesis of this comprehensive goodness appears in Al-Baqarah 177. This famous long verse defines true goodness, ilik, as far more than just outward ritual.
It lists iman, belief in core principles, giving wealth to specific disadvantaged groups, honoring covenants, and then, nestled among all these comprehensive actions, iqamat al-salat and zakat.
And the verse concludes by stating that all these actions constitute the stance of the truthful and the pious. This firmly frames Salat not as some standalone ritual, but as an integral component within extensive social reform efforts.
And finally, we turn to a piece of rhetorical analysis that uses a linguistic clue to confirm Salat means joining a movement. This is the analysis of the rhetorical device known as left nusher, wrapping up and unfurling found in Surah Qiyamah.
Okay, so left nusher is a powerful tool where two concepts are introduced in one line and their opposites are mentioned in the next line. It forces you to make the parallel.
Exactly. And the verse states, Fela sadaka wa sala, walakin kasaba wa tawala.
So let's decode the opposites. Kazaba, he lied or denied, is the clear opposite of sadaka. He verified or confirmed the truth. That one's easy.
So therefore, tawala, he turned away, separated himself, must be the opposite of sala.
This provides a profound definition. If tawala means turning away from the movement or the struggle for truth, then sala has to mean joining, participating, or actively engaging in the movement for truth.
It confirms that Salat emphasizes active participation in the righteous struggle, and the most compelling practical piece of evidence the source offers against the exclusive ritual definition.
I think I know what you're going to say.
The fact that none of the verses commanding Iqamat al-Salat include a single description, explanation, or sequence of the ritual's pillars.
If the verses were referring to a specific complex ritual, you would expect some defining instructions to be in the text itself.
The total lack of specific ritual instructions in these core verses is cited as strong proof that they're referring to the broader socio-moral duty, not the highly detailed, culturally established ritual we now call namaz.
So we've tracked the term Salat from the enduring center of the human body through the competitive striding of the horse track to the necessity of social justice and the imperative to join the struggle for truth. If we pull all these threads together, what is the final comprehensive meaning?
The overall conclusion of the source is that Salat possesses a broad network of meaning, but the single unifying upper ceiling meaning, the uskate anlama, is unequivocally duty and responsibility.
And all other definitions, support, prayer, good deeds, striving, even the ritual of namaz, they all fall under this comprehensive umbrella.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that this definition elevates salat to a universal cosmic principle, something that applies not just to humans, but to the entire natural world. We see this in Surah An-Nur 41.
The verse about the birds.
The verse asks, "Do you not see that all in the heavens and the earth glorify God, and the birds in rows, every creature knew its salat and its glorification?"
So if every created thing, including birds flying in perfect synchronized formation, knows its salat, then salat cannot be a uniquely human ritual.
It has to be a fundamental inherent duty or responsibility assigned to every created thing according to its nature. The bird's duty is to fly in formation and glorify. The human's duty is to establish justice and reason.
This universal application is powerful evidence for the source's assertion that the meaning of salat has been incorrectly prioritized by cultural interpretation. They reject the priority given to sharimana, the cultural or juridical meaning, over the original Quranic and linguistic meaning.
Right. The source defines sharimana as human-constructed culture, din kuturu, often equating to jurisprudence, which, they argue, has become detached from the wholeness of the overall divine system.
The primary problem, in this view, is that prioritizing namaz as the upper meaning is structurally incorrect. Namaz is a specific daily worship. Salat is the foundational, wider responsibility that encompasses it.
And the source suggests the specific cultural practice of ritual prayer may have been derived from the ritual practices of the people of the book and then applied retroactively to the broader concept of salat, unintentionally shrinking its scope dramatically.
So if the meaning is duty, what happens when that duty is ignored or performed hypocritically? The source turns to Surah Al-Ma'un, which contains the ultimate warning against this misunderstanding.
Woe to those who perform salat, faywalun lil muzallin, those who are heedless, sahun, of their salat.
This warning has always been a point of contention. Why warn those who perform the duty? The key is in that word sahun, heedlessness.
And it doesn't just mean you forgot or were distracted. Sahun is described here as a state where the mind is distracted, ignoring, neglecting, uncaring, or even consciously trying to forget or skip the actual duties of the divine system.
Look at the context right before this warning. The surah criticizes those who reject the moral system, and specifically mentions neglecting the orphan and not urging the feeding of the poor. These are the core social duties.
And the hypocrisy is cemented with the next line, those who make a show of it, your own. They perform salat, the visible duty, or act as a performance, as a show, to deceive others, while being fundamentally uncaring about the real duty.
The moral and social responsibilities that salat truly represents.
The synthesis is powerful. The target of the warning is not the one who struggles with the physical ritual, but the one who performs the ritual perfectly as a facade, yet rejects the entire system of social and moral values. They establish the form but neglect the essence of salat.
So to bring this entire linguistic and semantic deep dive together, the source concludes that salat is the umbrella term for a comprehensive list of active societal action items.
This includes all good deeds and righteous actions, active striving or jihad, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, genuine piety, fulfilling purifying financial duties, actively connecting to God, propagation of truth, efforts for a reform on earth, prayer in the sense of supplication, and the overall continuous consciousness of duty and responsibility, the entire concept of din itself.
This has been a profound semantic reconstruction, shifting the focus from a fixed, highly specific personal ritual to a vast, active, societal, and intellectual responsibility that requires continuous effort.
We have meticulously tracked the linguistic roots of salat, from the physical center of the body to the concept of intense pursuit, to understand that at its heart, the word signifies active pursuit and the continuous fulfillment of one's comprehensive duty, rooted in verifiable reason in tahqiq.
Absolutely. This deep dive offers a powerful new lens through which to approach familiar sacred texts, shifting the focus from mere ritual performance to comprehensive active engagement in the world, a monumental responsibility driven by intellectual effort and a continuously manufactured will.
And if the core purpose of salat is fundamentally duty and responsibility, and the etymology includes that powerful, almost violent image of wrestling with fire, meaning wrestling with danger, sedition, and strife.
What specific contemporary form of wrestling with fire is required of us today to truly establish this core concept of comprehensive duty in the modern world.
Yeah.
What societal threat, what form of chaos, what injustice are you required to actively strive against?
That is your takeaway. That is what you now know.
Until the next deep dive, keep researching, keep scrutinizing, and keep engaging.
We'll talk to you next time.